Right, hello everyone. I think my presentation today is going to be quite personal. It's really about my philosophy of coaching and what it's meant to me. I found writing this essay, the philosophy of coaching essay, really interesting. For me, it was when everything came together, and suddenly I sort of got quite a lot of what we'd been studying. It sort of really helped. But while I was doing that, it also occurred to me that actually what was influencing my style, my theory of coaching, was my past. Actually what's happened to me, the things that I've done and the way that I am and my values have had a really big influence on the style of coaching that I choose. So what I want to do this morning is just kind of run through some of that, talk about some of the things that have influenced me and why I want to coach the way I will coach. I started off life as an archaeologist. That's me sitting in a tent in Iraq, sticking pots together, quite some while ago. I've always been fascinated by the past, hence being drawn to that as a profession early on in my life. And I think it's really important, it's really fundamental part of me, that the past really influences how we continue to behave. And so for me, I sort of favour the coaching philosophies that focus on past experiences and how we react today. So psychodynamic coaching really appeals to me. Transactional analysis, again, looking back, that parent, adult, child model, seeing where you're at, again, that really appeals to me. Gestalt coaching, I know you weren't very keen on that, but I really like the sort of whole person approach and looking at a person, as a whole, and that really appealed to me. In contrast, what doesn't is solution-focused coaching. I mean, there's a lot in the theory of that, that spending time sort of deconstructing the past and considering that actually is a waste of time. So as a philosophy, that doesn't appeal to me. I'm not so keen on that. One of the other things that I did was I worked for the National Childbirth Trust for a long time. This is one of my post-birth groups coming back. I was an antenatal teacher, breastfeeding counsellor, doula, so going and helping women while they're actually giving birth, and an infant massage instructor. And for a couple of years I also ran the National Childbirth Trust helpline, and so part of that was training to be a counsellor, and that's where I started my counsellor training, which I continue with to this day. And the type of counselling that I was involved in is person-centred counselling, and I think that's, as Chris said, I think that's really important for me, that person-centred approach of empathy, congruence and unconditional positive regard. And I'd say that's definitely, I'd say, as Alan's talked about, having the rock with something written right the way through you, that for me is what runs right through me and my coaching approach. I think that's really important. And also something that I feel very comfortable with. It's almost my default style, because I've done it as a counsellor for so long, I kind of default to it as well. So that gets a big thumbs up. Gestalt coaching, again, as I mentioned before, in the earlier slide, I really like that emphasis on the whole person and seeing the person in their context, and I think that's really important too. Narrative coaching also appeals to me hugely, and that came out of my antenatal teaching as well. When I facilitated groups over 8 years, and over that time I was learning about what works in a group, and one of the things I found was really important was telling stories. Actually, people got it if you told them a story, if you mentioned about, and it didn't have to be a real individual, it could be a fictitious individual or a group of individuals of their experience, but if you mentioned it and made it real, people really got it. And that, I think, for me is where the appeal of narrative coaching comes in. Nowadays, I've been working with asylum seekers and refugees, And narrative coaching here, again, is really, really useful. I go out and give talks to people about their situation, explain myth busting really. I do get quite a few Daily Mail readers in the audience who have very different views than I have. And again, the thing I found that really captures people is telling them a story. So I have a case study which is an amalgam of 3 people's experience, but when I use it I can tell them this is real, everything in this story is true, and everything in this story has happened to somebody who currently lives in Plymouth. And that I found really powerful. So when I'm coaching, I like to use stories. I like to ask people, tell me about this. You know, tell me the story of this. Tell me, perhaps go forward 3-4 years. Tell me what it's like there. How does that help you? So that's a really important part of what I do. This is my daughter. I also spent some time, she has obsessive compulsive disorder, and I've spent some time while she's been in therapy working as a co-therapist, doing cognitive behavioural therapy with her. So her therapist would set exercises, and during the week we'd look at those exercises. And so again, because that's part of what I've done before, I found elements of that really useful when I've been coaching. So I'm quite keen on that. Positive psychology as well. Although I'd say there are elements of that that don't appeal to me, and like I say, the overall philosophy of solution-focused coaching doesn't appeal. There are elements of both of those styles that I find very helpful, techniques that I find helpful when I'm doing coaching. So, you know, they're in the toolbox as well. Another really important part of my life is my faith. I'm a Baha'i, and the underlying values of that are the oneness of mankind, unity, justice, equality, and the celebration of diversity in all its forms. And again, I think those are reflected in the values of person-centred coaching and Gestalt. While perhaps not being explicitly spiritual, those values for me feel comfortable in those coaching approaches. Again, that's it's a really important part of my life. So I thought transpersonal coaching, when I first read about that, I thought, God, this might really be good for me. This is the only form of coaching that really emphasises the spiritual aspect of life, which seemed to be sort of quite ignored in quite a few of the other philosophies. However, I started reading more about it and just kind of thought, whoa, actually, I'd need to learn a lot more about this and feel at all skillful in using any of it. And there are aspects of that philosophy I don't feel entirely comfortable with, and actually the aspects of one of the aspects is seeing the soul as unconditioned, and so believing that the way the past influences are present isn't a reality, it's something that can be challenged. And again, as I mentioned right back at the beginning, I do think our past influences how we behave now. So that aspect of it didn't appeal to me. So that's, I'm afraid, off the agenda. But no. One of my other hobbies is quilting. I really enjoy quilting. I learnt to do that when I was pregnant for the first time and on maternity leave. And that provides me with quite a meditative state when I'm doing it. It gives me time to reflect and to think, whether I'm piecing it together or stitching it. And actually thinking about it, my philosophy of coaching is very like a quilt. Person-centred coaching is the backing and the wadding, the bit that makes it comfortable in the middle. For me, that's that makes the bulk and the warmth of the quilt. For me, that's person-centred coaching. The top layer, I'd say, is made up of different patches of narrative coaching, small pieces of Gestalt, and psychodynamic approaches. All those are some of the patches. The embroidery, I'd say, is bits of cognitive behavioural coaching, exercises from positive psychology and solution-focused coaching. I'd say there's some strengthening of some of the delicate fabrics. You have to put a backing on those to make them stronger. And I'd say some of the knowledge that I've gained through some of the other philosophies, like ontological coaching and existential coaching, why those philosophies don't appeal to me. Again, there are parts of those, the knowledge of those, I think makes my coaching stronger. Finally, there are also patches like the transpersonal coaching, which actually are quite complicated to stitch, and I think right now I just need to put away and have a think about them and decide how I might do those better. But I don't want to throw them away altogether. And I think the quilting stitches, which you do at the end, that actually holds it all together, are made up of my personal values of equality, unity and respect. But I'm still learning, I'm still quilting that quilt. Thank you.